You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at keeleycompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the two-time national best-selling author of On Fire and In Awe. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, the host of the Live Inspired podcast, and he's the real-life inspiration behind the major motion picture Soul on Fire. Each week, John interviews extraordinary individuals about their life stories so you can more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. This week, you again are in for a treat as I'm thrilled to introduce you to a nationally recognized educator and a transformational leader who has overcome some of the most remarkable things in his life in order to inspire others to overcome difficult things in theirs. So his name is Dr. Gregory Ross. He's head of school at the remarkable West End School in Louisville, Kentucky, and has created one of the most successful K-8 programs, not only in the state, but in the country. Every student attends on full scholarship, and consistently, this little school outperforms the state averages. His journey from extraordinarily humble beginnings in Paducah, Kentucky, to leading one of the country's most inspiring schools is nothing short of extraordinary. Today, Dr. Ross shares how growing up with scarcity shaped his unshakable faith, how miraculous childhood healing set the course for his life's purpose, and how he's building a culture of excellence in one of Kentucky's most underserved communities. It's an incredible story. He talks about the power of seeing genius in every child, the way his mother taught 8 children, he's one of 8, to believe that they were royalty, even when they had nothing, and the daily practices that turned overwhelmed students into confident scholars and leaders. My friends, if you need to feel a little bit of hope again in your life, if you want to hear from someone who transforms lives simply by loving, leading, and believing fiercely in them, well, this episode is for you. So grab your backpack, then pull out your 3-ring binder. Come on, kids, it's time to go to school. Grab a chair, take a deep breath as I bring on my friend, now yours, his name, Dr. Ross. Dr. Ross, welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary.
I'm honored to be here.
Greg, I feel like I've already got a friend seated next to me, man. For the folks who do not know our friendship and your life, if you had to introduce yourself, you take the microphone and you got 30 seconds to tell the kids in the classroom or the administrators or a big podcast audience about who you are, what would you say?
I would say I'm Willa Mae's boy from the South. That she told me that an angel kissed me in her stomach, and I believed it every day. And she told me there was a purpose bigger than me. So I try to live a life of servitude. I try to treat others the way I want to be treated, and I try to see the genius in every child that I'm honored to be a part of.
So now if people are leaning in saying, well, so I'm curious what this man does for a living. What do you do for a living, Greg?
So I have the honor and privilege of being president, head of school of the greatest school on the planet, West End School, in Louisville, Kentucky. There's a school like no other. It is a K-8 school where every student is on scholarship. We get no government funding. We are completely at the mercy of those that see the greatness and genius in the children that we serve. And they see a school in what's considered the most heavy crime related area, the most impoverished area in the state of Kentucky, the west end of Louisville. What a lot of folks consider, they may overlook. And what we see is a community filled with history, a community filled with genius, a community filled with opportunity, and we just got to make sure that our kids see it as well.
So I want to slowly grab your hand and walk you toward the west end of Louisville. Your journey did not begin there, and I don't think it's going to end there, but it's where it's taken you today. And I want to hear all about the west end, and I want to hear all about the school and the lives you're changing. But I think what makes that story even more meaningful is when folks hear your story, because it's a wild one, man, and where you've been is incredible, impressive. So
Well, thank
let's go west on the highway for a little bit. Let's back up to Paducah, Kentucky for a minute. I'm from a pretty big family. Yours is even larger than mine. I think you have seven brothers.
7 brothers and one beautiful sister in heaven. Yes, I do.
Where'd you fit in the mix?
I'm number 4. I'm the third boy.
What did growing up as the third boy in this mighty, loud family teach you about life?
Well, it taught me that I have to. You hear Stephen Covey say things like seek first to understand, then to be understood. Well, I had to live that because there's so much going on. It was a lot of chaos at times, but it was a beautiful chaos. We had this beautiful woman, my mother, that nurtured us, that brought in, even when we didn't have food on our table, she would bring in people off the street and make sure that they had what they needed. So it taught us a sense of gratitude and gratefulness. I remember not having electricity and my mom still getting us up, all of us up at 5 a.m. for Bible study before school by candlelight. It taught me so much. It taught me endurance, strength. It taught me to never see or base things on what you see on the outside, but really look on the inside. And my mom had a way of making us feel like we were royalty, even when we didn't even have shoes with soles in them.
Will you tell me about that? Because we feel like we collectively, for the most part, feel like we're impoverished right now. We don't measure up to our neighbors. We don't measure up to most of our friends on social media. They all take far better vacations than we do, and they're far better looking than we are, and on and on and on. Like, so we are impoverished. And you, my friend, actually did grow up impoverished. You grew up in a struggling community. You grew up reading by candlelight, and you grew up living like you were royalty. Talk about that.
My mom made sure that our foundation was in Christ. And I know that everyone doesn't believe the same way that I believe, but I love them the same no matter what they believe. She rooted and grounded us in something so much bigger than us that we walked with him, we trusted him. There were days literally where we didn't have food, and my mom would say, God's going to provide. She would open the door, and there would be food on the porch. I jokingly say, but it's the truth, that I went to 12 schools in 12 years, and it's probably more than that. Some schools I went to twice because there's only so many schools in Western Kentucky and Paducah area. But that's a fact. We moved a lot and we always felt like home, and I've written a children's book that I'm gonna get published one day, but it's called The Day the Lights Went Out. And it just tells how my mom made everything such a spectacular event. Whether it was, if we didn't have lights, she made it a camp out. If we didn't have water, we had a water jug run to the park. She made everything seem so electric and exciting, even in the darkest of moments. And today she's still inspiring me to be great. So my brothers and I look back, especially in a world where 4 out of 10 African Americans will spend time in prison. African American males will spend time in prison. I look back and none of my brothers have been incarcerated. We may have had some run-ins, but fortunately, we've all been able to maintain jobs and careers and impact our community. And I look back and that's only because of her and her faith in God. I remember growing up and we would go to so many different places. And I never realized that all of them were free places.
Hmm.
Like if the downtown area had a big event, I realized a lot of times we were the only Black people there. My mom would always make sure that we were in tune with cultural opportunities and things that went beyond our community so that we could see the world and know
Yeah.
that we fit in that world no matter what. So she made us play sports. She made us play instruments, sing. She made us journal and become writers and do poetry and all these things. She was just so integral in making sure that we saw things from a different perspective.
Well, I'm interested in your children's book. I think I'm even more interested in your mother's biography. Let me know when that's
Yeah.
coming out because she sounds like about as fierce a lover of her family and their potential as anyone I've ever met.
Well, you know what? Since you mentioned it, I gotta just throw this out there. My mom wrote this little book. I keep it beside me all the time, but it's me and all but one of my brothers, and it's called "When All My Sheep Are Black: Prayers for Your Black Children." And I'm so proud. After she got all of us out of the house, she went back to college, and now she's actually Dr. Willie Mae Patterson.
Oh
So
my gosh, dude.
yeah, yeah, she's
Did
she's
not
pretty
know
awesome,
this.
man.
Was you mentioned music and sports and art and faith and activities in the community. What about education? Was that a
Oh,
priority for her as she guided her kids forward?
I tell you what, my brother and I, just to give you one story, we were pretty good athletes and fortunate enough to play some good ball in the day. My brother didn't do well in his assessment, didn't take it seriously, joking around, had a big tournament that weekend, couldn't go. Academics came first in every way. Church, academics, if it was practice on a Wednesday night, coach knew we probably wouldn't be at practice. That was her focus. Education and Christ came first in every aspect.
I'm reading between the lines, but I think this assumption is probably accurate. I moved a lot, you said, 12 schools in 12 years.
Yeah.
For some of us, that means upward mobility. Uh, I think in your situation, it meant that you were moving from spot to spot, just kind of hanging on and clawing for what you had. So tell us why you moved so much, and then what were the neighborhoods like that you were living in?
Yeah. So, we most of the time we lived in African American neighborhoods. We grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, and we moved from Madison Street to Harrison Street to Park Avenue. We were the North Side kids, everyone knew us as Willie Mae's boys. And as we got older, we did move, eventually we did move out into the county area, but, it wasn't always great. But my mom, oddly enough, she refused to let us, we always lived by the projects, but we never lived in the projects. We was always the house right next to the project. So, for example, we grew up right by Thomas Jefferson Housing Authority, but we didn't live in them. But we spent all our time hanging out in them. Anderson Court Housing Authorities. We didn't live in them, but we would spend our time, right there by them. But she was one of those women that was just bound and determined, to make sure that her children knew that they could do and be more. And sometimes that came with eviction notices. It came with, the struggle of just trying to make ends meet, especially in the late 70s, early 80s, and just plugging along. And so, it was tough. But I tell you what, looking back on it, I can't say how grateful I am for every opportunity. And then I ended up my high school. I went to Paducah Tillman and I was playing basketball in Thomas Jefferson Housing Authority. And this white guy was walking through the park and asked who I was. And, I told him, and my mom and he said, "Can I talk to your mom?" I'm like, "Man, I don't know who you are." But anyway, I ended up, he's like, "Well, I'm a basketball coach. I love to coach you." And that led to me introducing him to my mom. And I ended up at a private school in Marshall County, Kentucky. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is because no African American had ever went to school in Marshall County, Kentucky in history. So I ended up being the first Black graduate of a school in Marshall County, Kentucky, because my mom knew that number one, it was a Christian school. And number two, she also knew that it could open some opportunities and doors for me. So she let me go, and my brothers ended up going with me. So it was a pretty powerful experience.
Man, my one of my brothers, Jim, and my sister Amy went to a school in Oklahoma. And while we would visit them, we'd always sneak away from their beautiful campus to check out an even more beautiful campus, Oral Roberts. Really, I mean, it's an incredible place, and some of the art on campus remains with me, just the way things are shaped and what they celebrate. What was it like for you leaving Paducah for the first time to head out to Oral Roberts?
I tell you what, it was so my first time I went on a bus. I took a bus from Paducah to Oral Roberts, and it was mind blowing. It was when I got there, I just couldn't imagine. being able to go to school. So I've never seen anything like it. And,
Right.
everything is very dramatic, the prayer gardens,
Yeah.
the Curry Center, the Maybe Center, all these things are just such beautiful facilities. And I hear it's even more beautiful today, but it was just such an amazing blessing for me beyond words. But what's more important about my transition to Oral Roberts is the reason it was even on my radar. And so when I was a kid, I was deaf in my right ear and partially deaf in my left. And so I didn't talk much. And one day, it was actually a day that we had come from a doctor's appointment. I was home from school. And at the time, I chose not to talk. Like I just said I was not going to speak anymore. I'm home from school watching my mom was, doing my thing. I had a huge imagination, so I was probably playing with things that wasn't even there. But my mom was watching the Oral Roberts show. And
Yeah.
all I know is she confirmed to me that he said something to the degree of there's a young African American boy being healed of deafness in his right ear. And she put my hand on the TV and this excruciating pain. That's all that I remember. It's just like a pop, and it was just painful. But ever since then, I've had perfect hearing, and it also was one of those things where, my mom was like, "If we get the opportunity, I want you to go to Oral Roberts University." So as I got older and things started developing, the opportunity came. Although I had other options, I felt somewhat of a responsibility to go to Oral Roberts.
So when I step into a podcast, I always have about 150 questions, and I'll get through like four of them and instead follow the path. Like when there's a fork in the road, take it. All right.
Right, right.
So and I knew the story about this healing when you were a child, but I wasn't going to bring it up, but you did. And I think, well, now there's a fork. We should probably take that. When people hear that, here you're at home, you're not talking, you've got no hearing in one ear and limited in the other. Your mom's watching TV. Some preacher says there's a little African American boy who's deaf in one ear, and she holds you up to the TV, and you feel this burning pop, and then the hearing returns. It sounds fascinating and fictional. So for the listeners who are like, man, it's a cute story. Now tell us more about education and how do you change the racial inequity? Maybe we'll get there if we have time. But talk about this healing that you experienced.
Well, I could go on and on for days about how God has shown me the reality of who He is in my life. But that's probably one of the most, there's no way that I can question the tangibility of the God that I serve. He has made Himself evident in my life in many ways, but the fact that, here I am being able to see most of the world and very educated. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for him opening the initial window of blessing by giving me my hearing.
Mm.
So, I'm eternally grateful and humbled by his love. Like, what did he see in me? Who am I that you are mindful of me? So I'm a living witness that God is real. And it's so real that, you don't have to defend that you see me on screen. I'm at the point where I don't have to defend that his reality anymore. You either choose to believe it or you don't. But I'm definitely a witness of his love for us and his realness.
So you have a quote that I wrote down. I love it. It's around the time you were in school and you said, I found something I enjoyed more than basketball,
Yeah, yeah.
teaching. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a stat. You tell me what it means, and then we'll unpack. Ultimately, you lived into it. In Kentucky, I was the first 90, 90, 90 in the entire state of Kentucky. What does that mean?
So in Kentucky, the average percentage of proficiency in Kentucky is about 40% for reading and math. Math is a little lower, like 36%. For African Americans in Kentucky, the average is about 26% in math, 20% in reading. Well, in the state of Kentucky, I was the first school principal to have a school in the 90th percentile or above in poverty, 90th percentile above minority, who was also in the top 90th percentile in state assessment scores and state proficiency. And it was a public school.
That's wild. So I'm going to ask you about some of the jobs you had before that one and how it prepared you to radically change the culture of not just a building, but every single staff member, every single educator, every single custodian member, and every single child that came in and out of this building. So tell me what it was about these jobs that prepared you for that transformation.
It's really
First,
crazy because the my training started when I was 13 years old, working at Park and Recreation as a tutor for the housing authorities, and just being able to see kids that people thought couldn't learn, see them learn before I was even old enough to drive.
right.
And then I think I also cannot speak enough about being a big brother to 5 younger brothers and teaching and coaching them along the way. But as I got older, being on a sports team, you learn the sense of family and that everything isn't perfect. You're not going to always get along, but you have to work together in order to be successful. Being a police officer, I got into being a police officer accidentally because I needed a job, but it was one of those things that made me realize that I have to put other people's care before mine. And also, it made me realize that everyone doesn't have good intentions. And how do I protect those in a way that not only makes them feel safe, but it makes them feel seen and heard as well? So I've had a lot of strange occupations, from classroom teacher to police officer to working at Walmart and Lowe's while I was in the classroom. But all that to say, everything that I've done, I feel has prepared me to be right here where I am today. And I can't say I don't have bad moments. I had a moment last week that one of my board members had to say, "Hey, Ross, let's think this through." I have moments where I have to make sure that I don't take offense. My mom told me once, she says, "Son, never take offense, because once you do, you're already defeated." And so, it's one of those things where I have to catch myself because, I know I have a skill set. I know what I'm capable of, and I have a track record of it. And sometimes I got to just stop and realize, there's wisdom in silence. And I have to make sure that I'm listening more than I'm talking. So I
Hmm.
feel like every job I've had has prepared me to work at a school that people have seen as incapable or non-relevant or eventually one day criminals, and show them that not only does excellence live here, but excellence thrives. I walk down the hallway every day and I ask my kids, I say, "What's the expectation?" And they say, "Excellence." And I ask them, "Who are you competing with?" And they say, "Myself, doing better today than I did yesterday. I'm going to do better today than I do tomorrow." So when we're creating that mindset, we're teaching them that every day they're in control as long as their faith is rooted and they can see a goal, not just one that's selfish, but a goal that's going to impact the world to be a better place.
When you first step onto a campus, for many of these campuses you've taught and led, those words, it will be the first time they've ever heard them or spoken them. And when you hear something, it's hollow. And when someone says it to you, it's meaningless. And when you say it aloud, it's cheap. How do you begin to take it from being rote memory, excellence, competing against myself? Got it. Got it. Okay, let me go into being truly, sincerely lived out in their lives each day.
This is something that I don't say from an area of arrogance. I say it from an area of hurt and sadness. Every school, you mentioned the 90-90-90 school. I was offered a position for the State Department and I took it. And looking back, I regret it because I feel like I left that school too soon. Within 6 months, everything that I had put in was gone. And within a year, those scores were back to the bottom of the state. When I went, I was at a school in Lexington, Kentucky, and we did the exact same thing. We changed the culture, we built the family, we built the community, and for 8 years, we thrived. I mean, they were looking to make the school a magnet school for leadership in the community. I took a superintendent job, which I could not turn down. Within a year, they were back to being one of the bottom schools in the state. Or my superintendency, we were able to really accomplish things in a short amount of time, and our scores jumped up at every school. And I will say that district has maintained a lot of what we put in place, and scores are not as high as they were when I was there. I mean, but I was only there for a year, but they are hanging steady, and I'm proud of that. All that to say is the part that hurts the worst is that people are not willing to put themselves on the line and look at it more than a job. You know, in order, I can write the book, and that's what we say a lot in the classroom. We say, write the book, let's be the person to write the book. We want to change the culture. So we've got to write, but until these kids truly see, and it's such a corny quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But until these people see, from the teachers that I work beside to the students that I give a hug to every day, until they see that you're in the trenches with them and you're
Right.
willing to put forth the work right beside them, you're not just telling them to do something, but you're really cultivating the mindset of and the belief system of excellence. And you're talking in what excellence looks like every single day. You can't, until they see that, it's not going to be maintained. So you ask, how do we see this through? How do we make it more than words? We live it. My wife and I are here at the school, sometimes from 5 a.m. to midnight, but we live this work, and it means that much to us. And in turn, our teachers live this work. We ask one question at every interview, and that is, can you look across the desk and have the same goals and aspirations for that student that you would your own? We can't expect you to love them the same because you didn't create them, but we can expect you to have the same belief in that student that you would your own. And if there's any question about that, then this isn't the place for you, because we got to know that whoever's in front of that student truly believes that that child is capable. And that's half the battle right there. I can teach you how to be a great teacher. I can teach you pedagogical awareness. I can teach you classroom management. I can't teach you to be a good person.
Mm.
So, with that in mind, we really feel like we can create a culture that's unstoppable. And we do. We've done it time and time again. But I really feel like this location, the West End School, because we don't have a lot of parameters in reference to the state saying you can't do this, you can't do that, which I never cared about anyway. The same thing I'm doing here, I did at public school. My creed hasn't changed. The creed that my kids say every morning is the same creed that I've said for the last almost 20 years in public education. We don't care where we are. We still stand on the prayer. We pray every day. And I did the same thing in public schools. In fact, my teachers did it with me. So all that to say, I think the thing that changes, that the game changers when they see that not only are you going to stand beside them, but sometimes you're going to lift them up. Sometimes you're going to push them. Sometimes you're never going to leave their side. You're going to be there with them in the good times and the bad. And that's when true change happens.
So if you were arrogant, and this is our fifth meeting, you and I, so I know your heart and I know the reason why you do the work you do, it's not about you. If you were arrogant though, and you said what you said about you leaving schools and the schools failing, sometimes within 6 months, it would seem like, well, it's all about you. And I know you don't feel like that. So then the question is, then what is it? What happens when you walk out of a building, out of a district, out of a community? Why does the air leave with you, and what can be done so that doesn't happen next time? Because eventually there will be a next time. You will leave the West End of Louisville.
Well, the one thing I can say is as the head goes, so goes the body. And so leadership is a very powerful thing. A lot of big businesses, I mean, you have books like The Leadership Challenge and all the books by Armstrong, and you have leadership books all over the place because leadership is just that important. Until we have consistent leadership, I mean, shucks, we see it even from a national scale, the importance of leadership. Until we can maintain consistent leadership that's willing to put the needs of others before their own, we cannot always maintain the outcome that we would hope to have.
You've talked about it a couple times. Now, tell me about the West End of Louisville.
Oh man, the West End of Louisville and I'm a Kentucky guy, but I'm not born and raised Louisville. But I feel like it's definitely my home, and I feel like they've welcomed me into the community. The West End of Louisville has a huge, deep heritage of minority positive affluence, and and education and all these things. Like we're literally in the Virginia school, which was the first all black school and the one of the longest running in the state of Kentucky. So our original building is the Virginia Street School, which turned into Carter Elementary. So, but this community used to in the day, the black doctors, the black lawyers, they all lived in this community. But unfortunately, with time and a lack of care, it just became overran with negativity,
Yeah.
and I do think that some of that is people push out to different areas. And I'm not going to get into the communal, social, economic piece of it, but it does have a high level of violence. And you being from St. Louis, when people talk about East St. Louis, there's a mindset that comes with that. Or when people talk about the west end of Louisville, there's a mindset that come with that. They're scared of teenagers because a lot of these teenagers are packing weapons. There's a lot of gun violence. There's a lot of broken homes. There's a lot of kids that's not in school. At one point last year, I heard that there were over 40% of the students on West End were not in school. Not that they were truant, they were not in school. That is a lot of kids, especially when you think about a district that has over 180,000 kids.
Yeah.
So, it has its own mindset, but we are this sweet little spot that takes up about a city block of 210 kids that our kids are outscoring every public school in the state of Kentucky. Every public school in the state of Kentucky. Our kids are blowing them out the water. Now, my board wants me to be careful because they want to make sure our data matches up. But when I have a first grade class and 100% of that class is proficient, the data is almost undeniable. Our average right now is about 72% proficiency in reading and about 63% proficiency in math. We haven't tested yet this year because school has just started, but and this is based on the measures of assessment progress, MAP data. So when we look at that, we know that we're right where we need to be. Our kids are really doing something special. When we look back just 4 years ago, our numbers were drastically different. So we
Mm.
see that we're growing in the right direction and we're doing things the right way. And
Tell
on
me about
top
that.
of it, our kids, our middle school kids, are getting scholarships to some of the top schools in the city. The St. X's, the Francis Parker, the Walden. We have a lot of partnerships with the schools in the community for our kids to go into some of the top schools in the city on scholarship. And then we also have kids at Louisville Manual, which is one of the top schools in the city, and Central, which is one of the top schools. So we're going to both public and private, but it's something that special happening here that's really boosting our kids' confidence. And now we're seeing our alumni, graduate from college or work in the vocational school because we're only 20 years old. So we're seeing the progress and what's coming back to be a support to us. It's just phenomenal. And the one thing I didn't mention is our founder, Robert Blair, when he founded the school, he thought it was important for the kids to be able to avoid some of the communal issues. So our kids, our middle school kids, live on campus. Our boys, 6 to 8, actually live Monday through Friday, they live on campus. So it is considered a boarding school.
Well, that was one of my questions. So when I had the opportunity, and I view it as a profound honor to speak with East St. Louis to the schools over there a couple of years ago, and it was on a Friday, and I believe 40% of the students were in class that day, and the other
Mm.
60% were not. And I asked one of the leaders, like, why is that? And they almost just said in passing, well, it's Friday. Why would we expect them to be in class on a gorgeous Friday? And you have very different expectations for your students. And the fact that they live there and you live there and we reside together and we have these huge expectations for excellence in all of our lives, it changes how everybody shows up. Walk us through how that changes an individual student, because it's one thing to talk about 68% and we're moving toward 100% and we're moving toward these scholarships. But what is it doing in the life of one? How are you changing one student at a time? What's that work look like?
So even in our pre-K through 5 that don't live here, we understand that we can't predict what they go through before they got to school that day. We know that there's going to be factors. We don't know But if they had a conversation with their parent, if they got themselves ready, we don't know what food shortages they may have. Uh, Let me give you another scenario. Last year, I was looking at one of my grade levels, and I don't want to say which one because I don't want to point that out. But in this class of 15 students, 7 of them had lost a parent, like their parent is no longer on this earth. 10 of them had not had a connection with both parents. And then all of them had had a parent incarcerated at some point in their life. So when you think about 15 kids and all of them have seen incarceration, multiple of them had lost a parent. In fact, some of them had lost a parent last year alone,
Yeah.
but yet they're thriving in the midst of devastation, in the midst of having to worry about my family, having to worry about resources, having to worry about things that kids shouldn't have to, those Maslow's hierarchy of needs, things that you shouldn't have to worry about. But yet they're thriving academically, athletically, they're building social relationships. This is something that if we don't see this as a model, then we're crazy. If we don't see this as something, we're able to take kids out of a lot of situations. Now, don't bear in mind, I've got some great families. I've got a lot of kids with two-parent homes. But we are also a reflection of our community. And our community does not look like every family has a two-parent home. Our
Mhm.
community doesn't look like every home has college graduates or their parents have a 401k plan. It's not what our community looks like. So we are a reflection of our community, but we're showing our kids what they're capable of. I
Mm.
want to say this as well. Our parents are phenomenal parents. They love their kids. Some of them may have had a bad experience in education, or they may have not felt supported through their educational journey, but they know here their kids can. So, it's not that if our parents did not see the need, our kids wouldn't be here. They're here because they know that this will give them an opportunity that they may not have had. So, a lot of times when people see situations and families are struggling, it's like, oh, well, those parents are bad parents. No, we've got phenomenal parents. They just may not have resources. They're just in a different place right now. But we hope, I mean, our goal is also to support the whole family. So we hope that they, become educated, that they take on great jobs and opportunities. So we try to wrap our arms around the entire family as well.
The whole country and the whole world, there's so much brokenness, and mainstream media focuses only on the fires and the shootings and the robberies. And yet it seems like you focus on empowerment. As you
Yeah.
look forward, both professionally, but as a man, as a leader, as an American man, as a guy currently living in Kentucky, are you buying or selling? Are you optimistic or are you depleted?
Oh, I'm so optimistic. These kids make me see every day that we're going to be okay. And I don't just want to speak to the kids. I want to speak to the donors. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're fighting every day to keep our doors open. That's just our reality. Just like any nonprofit, every day we're looking at the red line. We're looking at the bottom line and say, okay, how are we going to raise this money? Through and through, our community shows us, hey, Ross, hey, Weston School, we see what you're doing. We see the changes you're making. And they give and they give and they give. We have a almost $4 million budget with no federal or state funding, and we find a way to make it happen thanks to our amazing board and our community that just loves us. But it's tough. It's tough. So I have no doubt my optimism is visible in the kids that walk through the hall. When I see a kid tell me that he's going to be a paleontologist, or a kid tell me that they're the next LeBron James. I had a young man tell me that he was reading George Washington Carver, and if Carver can find something out of peanuts, he feels like he can do the same thing. So when you hear these things, you have no doubt in your mind that we're in good hands. But we've got to continue to nurture those hands. Put a little lotion on them, and make sure that they're ready to work. But no, there's no pessimism in me at all. And we can focus on the government, but they're not in control of me. They're not in. We can focus on all these things that people say. Well, look at this, look at that. There's no way that this can work. There's no way it can happen. When we're living proof every day that it can. Our kids are living proof every day that it can. I've got a young boy named Zeno in first grade reading on the fourth grade level, doing fifth grade math. I'm in good hands. And that's something that we tell our kids every morning. We look at them and we say, when we look in their silence, I know they get sick of hearing me say the same thing over and over. But I'm grateful my mom said the same thing over and over to me. When we look in the silence, we don't just see sixth graders or third graders or ball players. We see our future doctors. We see our future lawyers. We see our politicians and ministers and teachers. We see our world changers right here. So when I'm old and I need a doctor, I know I can go to Ashton and he's going to make that happen. When I need a will done and I got to make sure my money's right, I know I can go to Jericho and he's going to make sure my money's right. If I want to go to a great ball game, I know I can go to Kane and he's going to make sure that I get front row tickets to his, we see this in them. So my optimism couldn't be any higher.
Final question before we shift into the Live Inspired 7. Your optimism cannot be higher because you see within each of the individuals in front of you, including yourself, beauty and excellence and potential. For many of our listeners and viewers, when they look around or they look within, they don't see that. What is something we can do who struggle with our own self-worth and struggle with our own potential when we recognize or at least feel like we're victims to our circumstances?
So I got to say that I've been there and I stand on faith. My faith supersedes anything that life can throw at me. My family, my friends, they all say, Greg, you don't ever seem to get shook or fearful or worried about things. You always seem so calm and you just have this feeling that everything is going to be okay. And that's because I know the God that I serve. I know he's going to see us through. I know that if he can let his disciple walk on water, he can help me pay a bill. I know that if he can part a Red Sea, he can assure that the kids that I'm caring for get out of their circumstances. He can make sure that this building that we've built gets paid off. He can make sure that our payroll gets met. And I know that times get hard and we get so down and defeated on ourselves. But that's when we have to stand on his word. We have to stand on Psalms 23 and know that he can lead us beside still waters. He can restore our
Mm.
souls. Well, when I get punched right in the face, Psalms 91 says that I'm going to tread upon the head of the lion and the serpent, but no harm will come near me. I got to know, I got to be able to stand on his word. So that's another thing that we do with our kiddos. Sometimes they may not see it in themselves. So we got to remind them who they are. We tell them, you have the mind of Christ, the strength of Samson, the warrior spirit of Joshua and Aaron, the faith of Daniel and the Hebrew boys. You have the vision of Joseph. You have the Holy Spirit of Elijah and Elijah. When they hear these things and we tell them this, we have a lot of mantras that we put over our kids along with our creed. We let them see that it's bigger than them. That
Mm.
what's in them is so much bigger than them. If one of David's mighty men can kill an army with the jawbone of a cow, then I think I'm gonna be okay. There's some fight in me as well. And we share that and we build that up in them. We build their faith up and we let them see what they're capable of. It only takes one negative person to tear down all that work that you do. So that's why we've got to continue to put them around good people. We can't be there for a moment and then not be there. We've got to maintain that. And even when they leave us, when they go to a good high school, we try to stay with them. When they go to college, we try to stay with them. Just like any kid in a family, you're going to wander off.
Right.
But when you come back, we're there with open arms ready for you. So that's what we try to do.
Hey, Greg Ross, I'm honored to know you and love you and look up to you and be moved mightily by the work you do. So let's wrap up our conversation so others can live this message. Question number one from the Live Inspired 7 is, what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
The Bible. That and the prayer of Jabez.
That's on in my mother's bedroom, man. The prayer of Jabez. What's one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little boy in Paducah that you wish you lived as brilliantly today in Louisville?
My imagination. Sometimes adulthood takes away that freedom to explore mentally and just let yourself go. You look at the black and white so much, but I wish I could still hone in on that imaginative genius and just let my mind go and just have fun with that.
If your home caught fire and all living things are out, you have an opportunity of running back in and grabbing one item. What's that one thing you would grab?
A picture of my family.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone, who would you like to have next to you?
I would say David, and King David, just because it says he was a man after God's own heart, and I want to know, what does that mean exactly? And he never lost a battle, so how do you survive it all?
Yeah, man, I think of so often how broken I am and how many mistakes I make and have made. And one of the things that brings me solace is knowing that David made some mighty mistakes in his life. And in spite of that, for some reason, God still loved him.
Yes, he did.
What's the best advice David or your mother or some educator or some child or anybody else ever gave you? So the best advice you've ever received is,
There's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. That means no matter how bad we fall, how bad we mess up, I'm not going to be the best father, I'm not going to be the best educator, I'm not going to be the best husband, but no matter how bad we fall, we can get up and do our best with humility and reverence for the Lord. We can do our best to do better the next time. So that's the best advice that I've had.
what advice do you wish you had heard at age 20?
That there truly is nothing that I can't accomplish. I've been given a lot of gifts, by God, athletics, academics, art, but I always had fear that I wasn't good enough. And I think that's the one thing that my mom constantly reminded me of, that I was, but I just didn't truly believe it. And society, just looking at society told me that I wasn't. So I think that's the one thing that I want to make sure that our kids know. If they think they can be a doctor, you know, you can. Now,
Mm.
let me show you what it's going to take to get there. But I think that's the one thing that I would really like to let kids know, that they are all capable. Now, you have to do things to set the foundation, no doubt, but that you can do it.
Dr. Gregory Ross, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
That old quote, he cared more than others think is wise. He gave more than others think was safe. I would like for them to see me as a servant,
Mm.
someone that chose to see the worst and create the best.
Whew. Saw the worst, created the best, cared, gave, served, loved, and in doing so transformed not just a little school in Louisville, but a world longing for it. Greg, I want to thank you, man, for moving forward, for believing in others, for listening to the wisdom your mother prayed over you, and for knowing that in spite of the struggles we all face, the best is yet to come.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you as much.
My friends, that is the voice and the wisdom of our friend, Greg Ross. My name is John O'Leary. Today is your day and ours. Live inspired. Well, my friends, I told you on the front side that having Dr. Ross join us on this episode was going to be a gift. And what a gift indeed it turned out being. If there's one thing I hope that you carry with you from this episode, it might be this: your circumstances do not have to define your potential, but the belief you place in yourself and in others absolutely does. Greg is living proof that when someone sees greatness in you, it can change everything. And when you choose to see greatness in others, it can change their world. Well, my friends, speaking of changing the world ahead of the holiday season, I want to invite you to share the kind of inspiration you felt today with the people that you love in your life. If you're looking for a gift that lasts longer than the wrapping paper, consider sharing my book. It's called On Fire, with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors and coworkers, anyone who might benefit from a little spark of hope right now in their lives. And we want to offer you a little something special today in addition. When you purchase 10 copies or more of On Fire, we'll send you the exclusive Soul on Fire DVD gift package, which includes the DVD of Soul on Fire. We'll send you a hat with the word Soul on Fire embossed on it, the intention card deck, a pen, and a commemorative movie poster signed by me. It's a small gesture from us of thanking you for spreading the inspiration this season. Books ship immediately, so you can wrap them, gift them, and ignite hope with them right away. We want to make sure that you get this sent to you, though, by the holidays. So please order by December 9th to make sure that we can live into that promise. My friends, I want to thank you for being part of this community. I want to remind you again, order that DVD gift pack by December 9th to ensure that it shows up in your world. How do you do it? Well, visit me right now online at johnolearyinspires.com. One more time, johnolearyinspires.com. And we'll have a link there to our shop. You can check out all the things we have around here at Live Inspired. Well, family and friends, fellow sojourners, I want to thank you for being part of our world, part of my podcast community. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift it is. Live with your soul on fire. Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son, Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.